Daniel got laughed at in the break room because his boots were held together with black tape. 10 minutes later, his supervisor called him over and told him to cut the seal on a forgotten locker that had been sitting in the back cage for months. When the door finally gave, the first thing Daniel saw was a dusty laptop wedged behind a mop bucket, like someone had hidden it on purpose. And when he turned it over, the asset tag on the bottom had a name scratched off with a key. This was a distribution warehouse on the east side of Houston, not far from the ship channel, the kind of place with forklifts beeping all night and cameras that always seemed to be pointed one aisle over from where you needed them. The locker was the kind employees rented for personal stuff, and this one had been marked abandoned after payroll stopped and nobody answered calls. Procedure said 2 people present, an inventory sheet. Then the contents went to the office until HR decided what to do. Daniel had his supervisor, a clipboard, and a cheap flashlight. The laptop was old but clean under the dust, like it had been wiped down before it was put away. No charger, no mouse, just the machine and a thin nylon sleeve that felt heavier than it should. Inside the sleeve was a folded printout with rows of letters and numbers and a line that said wallet. Daniel did not know much about crypto beyond headlines and a couple guys at work bragging and then going quiet when prices dipped, but he knew what the word wallet meant. He did the right thing first. He logged it on the sheet and carried it to the office. The setback came fast. The supervisor smirked and said, "If it is nothing, we toss it, and if it is something, it stays in-house." Daniel heard that and felt his stomach drop because he also heard the unspoken part. If it turns out to be money, Daniel would never see it. That night Daniel went back to his post, but his mind stayed in that locker. Before his shift ended, he checked the camera log like he always did, and noticed something that made his skin go tight. Someone had opened the cage door at 2:17 a.m. last week, and the badge ID on the entry did not belong to anyone still employed there. In the morning, Daniel brought it up like he was just doing his job. He told the security lead, Maria Ortega, that the cage entry looked off, and that the abandoned locker inventory included electronics. Maria pulled the footage. The angle was bad, but you could see a figure step inside, pause at that locker, then leave empty-handed. She looked at Daniel and said, "Either the laptop is still there or somebody already grabbed it and put something else back." Mini climax 1 was when they opened the office cabinet and the laptop was not there. Daniel felt heat climb up his neck. The supervisor shrugged and said, "Maybe I moved it." Maria did not play along. She told him to open his desk drawer. He refused. She called the site manager. Now it was a scene in the open, with people pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. Mini climax 2 was when the manager decided they were calling the Harris County Constable Office to do a quick report. Not because a laptop is sacred, but because the facility did not want accusations later. A deputy showed up, took names, and asked where the laptop was last seen. The supervisor suddenly remembered he left it in his trunk to take it to IT. He said he forgot. Nobody believed him, but nobody could prove anything yet. Obstacle number 1 was obvious. If Daniel pushed too hard, he could get fired for making trouble, and he had bills stacked on his kitchen table that could not handle a missed paycheck. Obstacle number 2 was less obvious and worse. If that laptop really held access to money, then this was no longer about a workplace argument, it was about who could get there first. Maria told Daniel, "Keep your hands clean. Let it go through the right channels." The deputy took the laptop into evidence for safekeeping, which sounded like relief until Daniel heard the deputy add one more detail. The locker was rented under a name that did not match any employee file, and the ID on the contract looked like it might be fake. On Daniel's lunch break, he sat in his car behind the warehouse, staring at the steering wheel, thinking about how a fake name could still be tied to real money. Then his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions about that computer." Daniel did not answer the text. He walked straight into the admin office and asked Maria to document it. She did. Then she said something that shifted the whole thing. The locker had been sealed with tamper tape from the outside, but when she inspected the door frame up close, she found fresh scratches near the hinge, like someone had tried to lift the pin instead of breaking the seal. Whoever wanted the laptop knew how to get in quietly. The deputy came back the next day to let Daniel and Maria sign a supplemental statement. The laptop sat on the table in an evidence bag. Daniel could see the edges of a cracked sticker that said Ledger Live, and that was the first time he heard a concrete name tied to what he suspected. The deputy said they were not going to dig into someone's finances over an abandoned locker, but if it tied to a fraud case, they would pass it to the right unit. He also said, "If you know the owner, tell us now." That night Daniel could not let it sit. Not because he wanted to grab anything, but because the threats meant somebody else thought there was something to grab. He went home to his apartment in Pasadena, pulled out his old laptop, and did the only safe thing he could think of. He opened public blockchain explorers and learned how to read transactions like a receipt trail, nothing fancy, just timestamps and amounts and addresses. Then he remembered the folded printout from the sleeve, the one he had logged on the sheet before everything went sideways. Maria had photographed the inventory for the report. She sent Daniel the image. The printout showed an address and a note that looked like it belonged in a file folder, not a hacker movie. It listed a transaction ID and the words transfer from Kraken, then a date. Mini Climax 1 was when Daniel searched the date and found a transaction the size of a house payment. Then another, then another. Mini Climax 2 was when he saw the wallet balance, visible on chain, sitting there untouched for years. It was not $1 billion. It was still enough to ruin someone's life if the wrong person got greedy. He thought he was being careful until he noticed a new outgoing transaction appear, tiny, like a test ping. Somebody somewhere had access and they had just checked if the wallet still breathed. Daniel took the next step the way a tired person does it, with caution and paperwork. He went to a small law office near the Pasadena courthouse, the kind with a faded sign and a waiting room full of people holding folders. The attorney, Mr. Levin, listened and stopped him the second Daniel started talking about passwords. He said, "Do not touch anything. Do not try to log in. You can turn over information, not assets. If you cross the line, you become the story." So Daniel focused on ownership, not access. The printout had that Kraken note. Daniel drafted a short, plain email to Kraken support, not asking for account info, just asking how a finder should report potential abandoned property tied to a deceased customer, if that was the case. He attached the transaction ID and asked them to forward the report internally. He also filed a report number with the Houston Police Property Division, so there was a chain of custody beyond warehouse drama. Mini Climax 1 came from something boring. A week later, a paralegal at Mr. Levin's office pulled a death record match through the county portal based on a name that appeared in a hidden Windows user folder on the laptop. Because the user profile was not wiped, just the desktop cleaned, the name was Gabriel Rivas. The record showed he had died in 2021, and the address tied to him was in Baytown. Mini Climax 2 came when Daniel drove to Baytown after his shift, parked outside a small brick house, and saw the place had a sold sign from 2 years ago. Neighbors looked at him like he was casing the street. One older man watering plants told him the Rivas family moved. Gabriel passed, poor guy, heart thing. His sister handled everything. Obstacle number 3 was real and sharp. There was an estate, which meant probate, which meant time, and time meant somebody else could drain the wallet if they had the keys. Daniel was standing in a humid Baytown evening, with mosquitoes biting his ankles, realizing he was racing paperwork. Then his phone rang with a blocked number. A man's voice said, "That laptop is mine. Leave it with the warehouse and walk away." Daniel asked one question he could not stop himself from asking. What was the name on the locker contract? The line went silent, and then the call ended. Mr. Levin moved fast after that. He filed an affidavit of found property and asked the probate court to appoint a representative to receive any digital assets connected to Gabriel Rivas, if the heirs existed and wanted to claim them. He also advised Daniel to ask for a formal finder's reward in writing, because without it, Daniel would end up with nothing but stress. The verification part was not glamorous. A licensed digital forensics tech in downtown Houston imaged the laptop drive with Daniel and Maria present, logged serial numbers, and produced a report that confirmed there was wallet software installed and transaction history linked to public addresses. No one opened the wallet. No one tried passwords. They treated it like a locked safe and only proved it was a safe. Mini Climax 1 was when the court identified an heir, Elena Rivas, in Austin, and her first reaction on the phone was suspicion. She told Mr. Levin, "I do not know you. I do not know Daniel. People scam families with dead relatives. Mr. Levin offered to meet at a notary office with a police report number and the forensic report. Mini Climax 2 was at that meeting. Elena showed up with her own attorney. Daniel showed up in his work uniform because he came straight from a night shift. He looked out of place and he felt it. Elena's attorney asked him flat out, "Did you take anything?" Daniel said, "No. I did not even try to open it. I just want it handled clean, and I want the reward if the court allows it." The ethical dilemma hit Daniel when Elena started crying quietly. Not loud, just tired. She said her brother had been obsessed with crypto, always saying he would leave something behind, and then he died with medical debt and she paid for the funeral with a credit card. Daniel realized this was not a lottery ticket. This was unfinished business. The cliff edge came when Elena's attorney got a message mid-meeting from an exchange compliance team. They had received a report about the same wallet from someone else 2 days earlier, claiming to be Gabriel Rivas. After that, everything tightened up. The exchange froze outbound transfers on accounts connected to the transaction trail, pending probate documentation. HPD kept the laptop in property storage. The probate court in Harris County issued a simple order directing the estate representative to take custody of the digital asset claim process, with Elena as heir. Daniel's part was reduced to what it should have been all along, a witness with a paper trail. The twist in the end was small but important. The person who had called Daniel was not a mastermind. It was a former contract worker from the warehouse who had found the locker number in an old roster, guessed there might be valuables, and tried to muscle in once he heard talk. Maria recognized him from the badge log and the constable deputy paid him a visit. He stopped calling after that, not because of fear of Daniel, but because official attention is the one thing petty thieves cannot stand. The legal reward took months, not years. Elena insisted on it, and her attorney wrote it into a settlement approved by the estate. A finder's reward paid from recovered assets after taxes and fees. Daniel got a check that looked unreal sitting on his kitchen counter. He used it the way a person actually does. He paid the past due rent, cleared 2 Max credit cards, fixed his car so it stopped overheating on the causeway, and set aside enough to breathe for the first time in a long time. He did not become a crypto guy. He did not quit his job. He stayed at the warehouse and people still joked, but the jokes changed. Maria told him one night while they did rounds, "You did the rare thing. You could have tried to be clever. You stayed boring and that saved you." Daniel understood something plain after it was done. The real risk was never the laptop. It was the moment when nobody is watching and you decide what kind of person you are. And even now, when he walks past that back cage, he still checks the seals twice, because he knows how quickly a cheap, abandoned thing can turn into a test.